All right, guys, take a deep breath. We're photographers, so we've got to sneak in a selfie really quickly. All you guys here are going to be in this, so wave a hand, say TEDx.
TEDx.
Brilliant, thank you. Oh, that came out good. It is so refreshing to be here, and not just because Athens is our hometown, but just to be among so many creative thinkers and fellow artists. And I don't just mean these amazing speakers. I mean you. Because creatives, artists, are exactly what every one of you are, even if you don't realize it quite yet. Anyway, this place is a far cry from the gaudy spectacle where Eileen and I found ourselves just last week. If you can picture us, we're walking through the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. So slot machines are ringing and lights are flashing and, oh, a giant advertisement of men in nothing but bow ties flashing us as well. Very nice. And here we are, two mild-mannered parents from rural Georgia, completely outside our comfort zone. And then we look up, and it's this surreal moment. We see a giant picture of ourselves looking back at us, an advertisement of ourselves.
I think we need to clarify, though, in this ad, we're wearing more than bow ties.
Oh, no.
I just want to say that.
No, that's right, yes. No. This is a photography advertisement for a photography conference, and it's advertising us as award-winning photographers, teachers. We're there in Las Vegas speaking among 14,000 of our fellow artists.
You have to understand, just a few years ago, no one would have ever described us as artists. So imagine our shock when suddenly we're given this larger-than-life status.
Literally. But think with me for a second. At times, aren't we all just a little bit guilty of placing artists and their creative abilities on a pedestal? As if these artists belong to some higher caste of humanity. They're creative geniuses who can just pull inspiration at will from some mysterious other realm. And the rest of us, we just don't have that special gift.
But what if that's not true? Mark Twain said thousands of geniuses live and die undiscovered, either by others or by themselves. Creativity is lying dormant inside all of our brains. All we need to do is activate it, to wake it up. And then once we harness that creativity, all our creative ideas and expression have the power to transform lives and ultimately change the world.
That sounds like a tall order. So if you have trouble, as of yet, just viewing yourself as creative, don't worry. In fact, Eileen and I still, to this day, have a very hard time viewing ourselves as artists or as creatives. And in fact, believe it or not, we started to notice that this feeling of artistic inability is common. It's a theme. Even as we created relationships and began talking with some of the world's best photographers and graphic artists. So why do we all feel this way?
Back when we first got married, I was churning out double caramel macchiatos at Starbucks while Philip was working in his family's retail business. Not the most inspirational work. Then somewhere between the 4 a.m. Starbucks shifts, we start dabbling with an old camera. And that's where our journey toward creativity really begins.
So we're just taking pictures, complete amateurs, but we start to improve just a little bit. We learn that pretty portraits can be pieced together by following just a few simple concepts: aperture, shutter speed, depth of field. Of all people, we, a business major and a former high school mathlete, we're taking our first baby steps into this touchy-feely art world. And the experience is a revelation because it demystifies the creative process. As it turns out, the creative process can actually look a lot more like the scientific method. We're experimenting. And the more we experiment, the more we start to get it right. And it's fun.
By 2010, we are small-town wedding photographers, almost starving artists, not quite. From the beginning, we try to find little ways to give back to the community through our photography. donating time to document a local fundraiser, or taking portraits for a deserving family who can't afford them. And then we do something a little more crazy. It isn't the most rational decision because, especially by this time, 2011, our bookings are low. But we empty our savings and we fly to Guatemala to help a little-known organization in a slum, ironically called Paradise.
This is a place where the police won't even go, extreme poverty, and it's the world's highest violent crime rate.
But this organization, Ngati Ministries International, is doing amazing work to break that cycle, rescuing boys from gangs and giving them a new life. For years, they've been putting in the hard work, but their song was still going unsung.
And Gotti just wanted to show people the children of Guatemala's slums. Kids like Manuel. Manuel grew up on the streets of Paradise with his brother. He dreamed of being a doctor one day until he was old enough to realize exactly how poor he really was. Manuel's brother was killed by the gang. Manuel dropped out of school, and eventually he almost dropped out of life.
So Ngati asks us to make a short 3 to 4 minute promo video to raise support for these boys. But there's just one problem. We've never shot video before.
At all. Literally, at this point, we have not even gotten smartphones yet.
In fact, our first pieces of video equipment arrived just 3 days before our flight. Now let that sink in. We spend 1 week filming, the next few weeks learning how to edit video, and ultimately release what has become a feature-length documentary film. Lost Boys of Paradise has shown in more than 30 states at film festivals, churches, universities, and it is because the story is so worth telling that even our amateur effort is able to make a difference.
Shortly after our film was released, Manuel graduated. Now he's continuing his education, and he's working with Ngati in his old neighborhood to bring that same hope to boys struggling just as he did. And because our film was able to help raise awareness and support to open a boys' home and more that still need to be built, dozens more doctors, teachers, astronauts, maybe photographers will be able to follow in Manuel's footsteps. And that means more to us than any award that our industry can offer. It's living proof that creativity can change the world. Organizations like Ngati are desperate for someone to tell their stories. We think of them as the real heroes, but do you realize that to them, you may be the one with superpowers? We, ordinary people, have the ability to help these organizations with the tools we already have. And that's thanks to the little-known inherent power of visual art. Market studies show that a front-page news story is only read by about 17% of its audience. Until you attach a single image or a graphic to that same news story, and suddenly almost 80% of people will read it. We're visual creatures, and collectively, we all decide what people see. And you don't need fancier equipment. Reach in your pockets if you have a smartphone. Hold up your phone. Let's see it. Maybe 1 or 2 in the room, right? Oh my goodness, yeah. As I thought. You have a multimedia studio in your pocket, complete with the ability to live broadcast worldwide. This is amazing. Many contemporary artists are doing some of their best work with smartphone cameras now. You wouldn't know it, but if you watch our films, many of the clips interwoven in were created on our iPhones.
You already know how to use the paintbrush of our trade. You're using it right now to document and share your own life. What if you use it for more? What if we use photos to not only celebrate life, but to reclaim lives where they're being destroyed?
We have all the tools and resources at our disposal. We just have to stop thinking of ourselves as incapable of creating. And when we do, we can fuel the inspiration that we need for personal projects, large and small, that change the world. So why are we sitting back and leaving the world changing to the brainiacs, the leaders, the so-called geniuses? You know, ancient Romans didn't believe that you could be a genius. They only believed you could have a genius. A genius, where we get our word genie, was literally a spirit that, if you were lucky enough, would come and whisper inspiration into your ear. Today, we've elevated a special class, a select few, to that same divine level. And we've given them the label genius.
So despite all our progress and understanding of the brain, the vast majority of us still feel far removed from creative genius. Even our language is still limited by this way of thinking. We use phrases like a stroke of genius, or a light bulb moment, or inspiration struck like lightning. We might as well be waiting on the genie. We obviously assume the creative process is equally unpredictable.
As it turns out, the same tool that we should be using to change the world has changed us. That's because one of the main killers of creativity in your brain is overstimulation. And this is how it works. Your brain is like a seesaw. And most of the time, it's in this information gathering mode called task positive. And sometimes, if you'll let it, it goes into this information processing mode, task negative. It's just one at a time. That's the way the neurons move. You guys, this, task negative, is your creative genius mode. But it only happens when your mind is wandering, when you're bored. And yet we're constantly working to try to shut that down. What's your first inclination when you feel bored? I know I tend to reach for my phone. When you're looking at videos, when you're surfing Facebook, you're not vegging out. You're in hyper info gathering mode. When you're in this mode, you're effectively guaranteeing that no bolt of inspiration has any chance to strike. No genius spirit will ever be able to speak to you.
Boredom is your friend. Boredom is what allows your mind to wander. It's what happens when you look into a fire or stargaze or just watch paint dry. And a wandering mind is this incredibly powerful thing.
There's no question about these people's achievements. But the world, the way they changed the world, they did it all with brains that were no bigger than yours. They weren't born geniuses. In fact, they may have been a little bit crazy. These people didn't have information to the information superhighway we have, but they had something in common. They all knew how to stop, sit, and think. And if you can make a lifestyle out of that, creativity is the natural result. If only we could change the world. If only. I hate that phrase. If only means we don't believe we can. Steve Jobs founded Apple, who wouldn't allow his children to have iPads, by the way, said, when we grow up, you tend to get told that the world is the way it is. And your job is just to live your life inside the world. Life is much broader when you discover one simple fact. Everything around you was created by people who were no smarter than you are. And you can change it.
We, all of us normal people here, can change the world. We can recreate it. There's so much need. There are thousands of people with inspiring stories to tell. It's easier to ignore them, to keep the camera turned toward ourselves, but they deserve to be heard. So we leave you with a challenge. Stop wishing to become creative geniuses, and let's see how our collective creativity can change the world. All it takes is to exchange your next selfie for something selfless. Thank you.
Thank you.